Tonight, shouting matches and extraordinary allegations in Congress over the Epstein Files. U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi is accused of failing to hold anyone responsible.
You are in charge. You have the power to change things, to hold these men accountable, and you're doing the opposite. You're protecting them.
This is so ridiculous, and that they are trying to deflect from all the great things Donald Trump has done.
Outside Virginia Giuffre's brother joins survivors blasting the release of the Epstein Files as sloppy and incomplete.
Why are the perpetrators' names being redacted while survivors' names are left unredacted? We are done with excuses. We are done with delays.
Questions too in Washington about Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, and here police say they're talking to prosecutors as they look at claims the King's brother shared government information with Epstein. Also tonight, one of Canada's worst mass killings in years. 9 people shot dead by a teenager at a school and house in a small mountain community.
The nation mourns with you. Canada stands by you.
Just back from Sudan, the head of the Norwegian Refugee Council describes massacres beyond belief after almost 3 years of war. And the Irishman who says he's fearing for life after Trump's immigration crackdown turned his American dream into a nightmare. All of that and more ahead on The World with me, Yalda Hakim. Good evening and welcome to the programme. We begin tonight, as we often have lately, with Jeffrey Epstein, a saga with many strands stretching around the world. But there's a common thread: how institutions from the White House to Congress, Parliament, Number 10 and Buckingham Palace are being tested and shaken in how they handle it and respond. Earlier, there was open hostility in Congress where US Attorney General Pam Bondi faced questions and accusations. But it appeared the main spectator she was playing to was the one in the White House. Here in London, Keir Starmer faced his first Prime Minister's question since what's widely seen as his near political death this week.
I've accepted responsibility and apologised for the mistakes that I made.
We know the truth. It is because he is throwing everyone under a bus except himself.
Well, while in Saudi Arabia, Prince William has wrapped up a 3-day trip overshadowed by his uncle, the Prince of Wales will head back home, where police and prosecutors have spoken about the Andrew allegations. More on that shortly, but let's begin with events in Washington. Here's our US correspondent, James Matthews.
So help you God.
I do.
From America's top prosecutor, it was pure theatre.
I'm going to answer the question. You, Mr. Nadler, were one of the leads on the impeachment. Only 2 people voted against it, and you were one of them, hypocrite.
Pam Bondi came in punching. She leads Donald Trump's Department of Justice. And this was an appearance before the Judiciary Committee, a job review. She has a poor rating with survivors of Jeffrey Epstein.
It's good to see you.
They made their feelings clear in a news conference beforehand.
The people who have harmed us, they are hidden, while survivors have been exposed.
The people who were supposed to protect us instead shielded abusers and re-traumatized survivors.
So I ask you all to stand behind us and demand accountability for our government, because we certainly are going to.
We stand here today, united and strong, and we are asking for something simple. Treat us like human beings.
Those same survivors were inside for the committee hearing over Pam Bondi's shoulder, not that she looked back.
The harm that it has done to the survivors who are standing right behind you and are waiting for you to turn to them and apologize for what your Department of Justice has done.
Members get to ask the questions, the witness get to answer in the way they want to answer. The Attorney General can
That's
respond.
not accurate, Mr. Chairman.
Because she doesn't like the answer.
Epstein was top of the agenda, survivors and alleged perpetrators.
I find it absolutely despicable that you sought to protect Epstein's clients, like former Prince Andrew.
Given the evidence, Pam Bondi was asked, why had she ruled out prosecutions?
Please put the photos back up. These two photos staring you in the face are evidence of a crime and more than enough evidence to predicate an investigation against former Prince Andrew.
There were questions for the royals inside the room and outside.
Family's reputation is on the line right now. And so I hope they do the right thing by letting authorities hold Andrew accountable for anything he did.
The Epstein story has a wide cast of characters. Howard Lutnick, among others, the Commerce Secretary, who said he was never in the room with Jeffrey Epstein after 2005. But the files show they were in business together as recently as 2014. Nancy Mace turned out to support survivors on Capitol Hill. What was her view as a fellow Republican? Should Howard Lutnick resign?
Going to lunch with someone isn't a reason for resignation.
He was in business with Jeffrey Epstein long after he said that he was.
Right. Again, not telling the truth isn't a reason to fire people. But however, I think you can question someone's judgment going to a pedophile island with your children to go have lunch with a convicted pedophile. I would never do that as a mother.
He appears to have lied about. He appears to have lied about his association with Jeffrey Epstein.
I mean, you can lie and still have a job, right? But
if you lie, you're part of the cover-up, surely.
I'm not going to politicize this, okay?
You're so obsessed with, you don't, do you?
I'm going to teach you the rules again. You're the Attorney General of the United States. We have rules here.
You're obsessed with him.
You're the Attorney General of the United States.
You're obsessed with Donald Trump. You have Trump derangement syndrome.
This was a matter most serious, reduced to political knockabout. It was a reflection of how this country does justice now.
The hearing is adjourned.
It's different and divisive. James Matthews, Sky News in Washington.
And James joins us now. I mean, James, it was quite extraordinary to watch. I mean, shouty, fiery, the theatre of it all. It was incredibly dramatic.
Yeah, and I suppose some would say tragic, actually, Yalda. That picture of survivors of Jeffrey Epstein who've experienced everything they have been through, standing behind Pam Bondi, looking over the Attorney General, who is telling them to move on as part of the Trump administration. And that's the tension right now in all of this. You have a government saying, nothing to see here, we've done everything we could, and yet the people who held that news conference, who were in the room, they're saying, hang on a minute, there are 2 million and more documents that remain unpublished. You have put documents out there that identify some victims and yet conceal the names and identities of perpetrators. That's the accusation being levelled by Epstein victims. In the words of one of the Democrat representatives, she said, what we've seen is not closure, it is a deliberate attempt to intimidate survivors. That's a sentiment echoed by the survivors themselves. They are not happy. And we're at a stage, Yalda, where this should have been an episode, I suppose, that should have been dealt with. It is far from it, I can tell you. Strong emotions amongst those survivors, tears, and clearly strong feelings that they have been sold short in all of this. And of course, in amongst the performance, the theatre of it all, Pam Bondi, you know, the shouting, the knocking back, the playing to President Trump. This was a job review, and she was clearly making sure that the boss would be impressed by everything she had to say. But in amongst it all, you know, there was the appearance of Prince Andrew, the picture inside Capitol Hill of a member of the royal family on all fours over a female lying on the floor, and questions to America's top prosecutor. Why did you not prosecute this man? Quite extraordinary.
Yeah, absolutely. James, thank you, as always. Well, let's speak now to Joshua Schiefer, who's a former lawyer for Epstein survivors. Thank you so much for joining us here on the programme. I mean, just speaking there to my colleague, we saw the theatre, we saw the drama and the shouting and the back and forth, but at the heart of all of this are the survivors.
It's the tragedy that never ends, and the betrayal that really is at the heart of this. It keeps expanding. These victims who no one questions what they've been through, they have been scrutinized. When we set up the Victims Compensation Fund based out of the U.S. Virgin Islands, led by some of the most prominent lawyers in the nation, Everybody was promised that this was going to put an end to this. These victims and survivors were going to maintain their anonymity, and accountability would move through because the estate would be reduced to nothing and justice would come. There were going to be prosecution. That has not happened. And that visceral image today of those victims standing with their arms raised behind America's top prosecutor, who has continued to betray them, is striking. This is a sad day of unfortunate theater for the American justice system.
Yeah, and the way that these files have been released, you know, the names of the victims released, the way that that's been done, and the names of others redacted, you know, you can see why these victims, these survivors, are so angry and as you say, feel so betrayed and let down.
Well, reverse roles with them for just a moment after being abused by the most powerful elites in the world and having to deal with the cover-up, having to deal with the ridiculous initial prosecution from Alex Acosta, having to go through all this, and then years later still being thrust into the middle of the biggest media firestorm, I'm going to say, of my entire life. And I've lived through the scandals. Nothing has affected the community quite like the Epstein revelations and what's been included in these files. And these young women have been forced into the middle of it because the promises made to them have been broken. And we have parts of our government that are trying very hard to achieve accountability for this shadowy universe of incredibly influential people. But then they're faced by Miss Bondi, who's a very accomplished political leader. She is an accomplished prosecutor. And what we hear from her isn't the typical assurance that the state's going to make it better for the victims, that the state's going to do the right thing. No, it clearly, as your prior guest indicated, she's playing to an audience of one, and it's her boss. And her boss definitely wants to see the fight pushed back. He is a fight first kind of individual. And then he wants this issue, all of Epstein, to just disappear. And that's not going to happen, which is the really big takeaway from today's testimony. This issue has long legs, and we're going to deal with the story and its aftermath for literally years.
Yeah, which was my next question, just some of your key takeaways from what we've seen, the way it's all played out, because frankly, there are still millions more of these files and documents that haven't been released yet.
Yeah, and what we typically, when we're dealing with crisis communications, you've got that first big drop of information. Here we are going to have multiple big drops of information. We've already had them previously. Then this is clearly the most substantial 3 million odd documents, somewhat redacted, somewhat not. There's some access issues. But then there's the remaining 3 million. And I don't know very many people that think that that's really a comprehensive collection. 6 million documents. Are you sure there aren't more? Trust in our government is at a very low level when it comes to these kind of reports. And the Trump administration is being well known as an administration that says what it wants you to believe, even if that's not reflected in reality.
Has this truly captured the attention of the American people? I mean, it's something certainly we speak about a lot, almost every day on this programme. We've been covering it, certainly the connections with Lord Mandelson and Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. But I just wonder, in the United States, is this something that people are paying attention to and consuming as well?
Absolutely. It's dominating our news cycle. And in fact, we hear a lot of admiration for the serious nature in which other countries are dealing with issues like Lord Mandelson. And we look at the affirmative actions being taken by governments to remove people, investigate people. We've seen resignations. We've seen this affect multiple royal families. That's very impressive from our perspective in America, because we're all asking what's going to happen here. Why can't we get this kind of action? And that's an unanswerable question currently from the federal government. Not one of the people involved in the file disclosures so far has been prosecuted. And we've seen very influential current leaders be just called out on the carpet for blatant lying. It's not a pretend miscommunication. It's not an interpretation issue. No, That's just a flat-out lie, and these are the most important cultural, economic, political leaders and influencers in America. We want more accountability. Question is whether we're going to get it.
Joshua Schiffer, thank you very much for joining us here on the programme.
Thank you for having me, and I hope you have a wonderful evening.
Thank you so much. Now, more on the Epstein Files in a moment, but first some breaking news. The Prime Minister has responded to a story we've revealed this evening. One of Britain's leading businessmen has told us he believes Britain has become colonised by immigrants. Jim Ratcliffe, the billionaire owner of Manchester United and founder of the chemical company Ineos, made the comments in an interview with Sky's economic editor Ed Conway. Here's what he said.
If you really want to deal with the major issues of immigration, with people opting to take benefits rather than working for a living, if you want to deal with that, then you're going to have to do some things which are unpopular and show some courage.
And has this government done that?
No, I think they I don't know whether it's just the apparatus that hasn't allowed Keir to do it, or he's maybe too nice. He's a nice. I mean, I know Keir. He's a nice man. I like him, but. It's a tough job, and I think you have to do some difficult things with the UK to get it back on track, because at the moment I don't think the economy is in a good. You can't afford. You can't have an economy with 9 million people on benefits and huge levels of immigrants coming in. I mean, the UK is being colonised. It's costing too much money. It will cause.
It's been colonised.
It'll cause. Well, yeah. The UK is being colonised by immigrants, really, isn't it? I mean, the population of the UK was 58 million in 2020. Now it's 70 million. That's 12 million people.
You met recently with Nigel Farage, didn't you?
I did.
Do you think that they would be a good government if they were to win the next election?
I think Nigel is an intelligent man, and I think he's got good intentions, but in a way you could say exactly the same about Keir when Keir came in. I think it needs somebody who's prepared to be unpopular for a period of time to get the big issues sorted out, would be my view.
Jim Ratcliffe there. Well, in the past few moments, the Prime Minister has posted online, offensive and wrong. Britain is a proud, tolerant and diverse country. Jim Ratcliffe should apologise. More reaction and analysis in the wrap with Anna Botting at 10 p.m. Well, Prince William has wrapped up his 3-day official visit to Saudi Arabia, a trip that was overshadowed by questions about his uncle, Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. The visit was supposed to strengthen relations between Britain and the Arab Kingdom. Others had hoped it would shine light on human rights issues. However, in the end, it was the Epstein Files that stole focus, as our royal correspondent Rhiannon Mills tells us.
This really is just a sign of how difficult it still is for the royal family to have any sense of control over this story. You might remember it was on Monday that we heard that Thames Valley Police were assessing some claims that have been put to them by Republic, the anti-monarchy group, relating to emails in those latest Epstein files, which suggests that Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, during his time as a UK trade envoy, may well have been passing on information to the convicted paedophile Jeffrey Epstein. As a result, Thames Valley Police said they were then assessing allegations of misconduct in a public office. Now, the new update they've given us, they have said, as part of this assessment, we've engaged in discussions with specialist Crown prosecutors from the CPS. We'll provide updates as and when they're available, but at this stage it'd be inappropriate to discuss further specifics of this work. They also later on add that while we cannot provide timescales over when a decision as to whether a criminal investigation will be opened, we can assure you that Thames Valley Police is making progress as quickly as possible. Now, if you're not an expert in legal matters, often the reason that the police will approach the CPS is to try and figure out whether they have enough information to form some kind of criminal prosecution. So that's why they'll potentially be talking to the Crown Prosecution Service. The problem for the royal family, of course, is it once again blows up this story and draws a focus onto the Andrew and Epstein scandal. And it comes, of course, after 3 days in which Prince William was really just trying to focus on the job in hand while he was over here in Saudi. Today, again, they have tried to deliver some brilliant pictures that they hope to beam around the world. For example, him heading out to the spectacular setting of the desert of Al Ula, seeing the work that they're doing to encourage tourism, but also protect the environment. Also meeting up with some of the Crown Prince's team, again, to discuss and show off a really positive side of Saudi Arabia, but also the work of the British royal family. But really, again, we are talking about this Epstein scandal, and I think the fact that many people really want to hear more from the royal family. Now, one thing they have done earlier in the week is a statement from the King said that if they were approached by the police, they would, of course, assist in any way that they could. But in terms of giving any kind of statement on camera, I think we're going to be a long time waiting for that. I don't think that they feel they have any questions to answer at the moment. They keep trying to distance themselves from Andrew, saying that he is the one who potentially has any questions to answer from the authorities. After all, he was the one who maintained that contact with Epstein, not the wider family and not the institution.
Rhiannon Mills are reporting there. You're watching The World with me, Yalda Hakim. Coming up on the programme, Canada's worst school shooting in years. Police reveal more about the suspect.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
I'm going to take you behind the scenes here for Election Night Live. They have gone up and up.
Being a Sky News journalist.
Ed Conway, Sky News, is anyone going to talk to us? Mortgage rates did go up very sharply during your time in office. Here it is.
First off, just the scale of what we're looking at.
Our data shows it's been happening. Question is, why it hasn't been stopped.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News presenter?
We've done the work and the reading, so you don't have to.
Being a Sky News presenter.
Hello and welcome. Westminster, the heart of British politics. I'm so sorry about what happened to you. So what on earth is going on?
It's not true.
Can I tell you what I think? It's really unusual. Mornings with Richard and Frost. Let's crack on. Let's get started.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
Who's funnier?
Being a Sky News journalist.
A special edition of The World with me, Yalda Hakim.
Pakistan had the right to respond.
You're like, what?
Historic day here today. Congratulations, this is a huge moment.
But what happens now? Canada's Prime Minister Mark Carney says his country is in mourning after the worst school massacre in more than 3 decades. At least 9 people have died, including the suspect named as 18-year-old Jessie Van Rootselaar, who identified as female after transitioning 6 years ago. Another 25 people are injured. It happened in a very remote part of Canada in the east of British Columbia. The town of Tumbler Ridge is more than 600 miles north of Vancouver and has a population of around 2,400 people. The school where the shooting took place says it is staying closed for the rest of the week. International correspondent John Sparks has the story.
It is the last thing you'd expect in small-town Canada. A mass shooting at the local high school in the foothills of the Rocky Mountains. Here students run for cover after a terrifying 2-hour ordeal. Classroom doors barricaded with desks and chairs and bookshelves. 6 people were killed at the secondary school in Tumbler Ridge. The bodies of 5 were discovered in the library. Another was found in the stairwell. The majority were children. The body of the shooter was also found with self-inflicted wounds.
We understand the community has questions, and we understand they want to know the motive behind this tragic incident. We do believe the suspect acted alone, and there are currently no other outstanding suspects.
The police said the suspect was an 18-year-old school dropout called Jessie Van Rootselaar. She was a transgender woman beginning her transition 6 years ago. Before Van Rootselaar entered the high school, she killed her mother and her stepbrother at the family home.
Police had attended that residence on multiple occasions over the past several years, dealing with concerns of mental health with respect to our suspect. I can say that on different occasions, the suspect was apprehended for assessment and followed.
So apprehended under the Mental Health Act?
Yes.
Canadians associate mass shooting incidents with their neighbours to the south, and the country's Prime Minister appeared visibly moved.
We will get through this, we will learn from this, but right now it's a time to come together, as Canadians always do, in these situations, these terrible situations, to support each other, to mourn together, and to grow together.
Members of the local police detachment were quick to the scene, arriving 2 minutes after the first call, but they didn't prevent this tragedy. They later removed a rifle and a handgun from the school. The victims haven't been identified, but the children were aged between 12 and 13 years old. A teacher was also killed. Difficult questions will follow as a small community and the nation begin to grieve. John Sparks, Sky News.
Well, Larry Neufeld is a politician in British Columbia who's lived and worked in the area where the shooting happened for more than 30 years, and he joins me now. Thank you so much, Mr. Neufeld, for joining us here on the programme. And this has clearly rocked not just this small community, but the entire nation.
It's beyond description. Beyond description.
Yeah, I mean, we saw Mark Carney, who was visibly shaken as well and sounded incredibly gripped by the emotion of all of this. Just help us understand a little bit more about this community and just put it into context for us.
Absolutely. It's one of the most idyllic places that you could visit. It's nestled in the Rocky Mountains in a heavily wooded area, beautiful, deeply incised rivers, waterfalls, a UNESCO World Heritage Site, and it's a jewel. It's an absolute jewel. And a very large part of what makes it such a jewel are the people.
Yeah, I mean, just reading now, very small population that lived there. And so big questions are going to be asked now about gun laws and this kind of violence.
Well, that's for others. Today, there is no politics welcome in Tumbler Ridge. And in the weeks coming, this focus must remain on the victims, on the victims' families, and on the community. The recovery of this community depends upon it.
Yeah, and so talk us through that, about the victims and just, you know, the way that this is unfolded for this community.
The only way that I can describe the situation on the ground, I was here at daylight or before daylight. The way that I would describe the mood of the community and individuals is the only word that seems apt at this point is numbness, complete numbness.
And we were also saying, I mean, this is the first time, you know, that the nation has faced something like this in 3 decades.
Again, I'm not going to wade into that end of things. The focus in my mind must be on the victims' families, the community, and the recovery, full stop.
OK, Mr. Newfield, we'll have to leave it there. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
This is The World with me, Yalda Hakim. Next up on the programme, the Irishman being held in immigration detention in the US, who likens the conditions to a modern-day concentration camp.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
They call him the king of the jungle.
Being a Sky News journalist.
Yusra Al-Baghir has this report.
And this is what's left of it.
As a woman of colour, how did the Harris campaign speak to you?
People risk their lives to speak to us for this report.
Mr. Zuma, Sky News.
We're trying to see as much as we can.
An Irishman being held in US immigration detention has said the conditions are like a modern-day concentration camp. Seamus Cullerton, who's married to a US citizen, says he was arrested despite holding a work permit and waiting for his residency green card. He's now calling on the Irish Premier to raise his case with Donald Trump during his trip to the White House in March. Our US correspondent David Blevins reports.
My name is Seamus Cullerton. I'm 38 years old. And I'm currently being detained in Camp East Montana in El Paso, Texas.
That's just one of our vacations.
His wife could only show us pictures. Seamus Cullerton is in a detention centre 2,500 miles away. But we'd come to Boston to hear his story. His only contact with the outside world, a phone line.
I lived quite a normal life, low-key lifestyle, just working hard, staying out of trouble. I wasn't a big party guy, just spending time with my wife, my dogs.
The 38-year-old from Kilkenny had built a life here in Massachusetts. Arriving in 2009, he overstayed the 90 days of his visa waiver, but later married an American, giving him the right to change status, and was one appointment from securing a green card. But was at a building store when ICE agents swooped 5 months ago.
And he says ICE picked him up, and I had a million questions, but I just said, "Are you okay? And do you know where they're taking you?" And he said, "No, they're not telling me anything. I'll call you when I can." And then the phone hung up, and I didn't hear from him for 4 or 5 days.
So how do you feel all these months later that you're still in the same place?
Oh, sorry. It's hard to believe, honestly. You know, I don't understand it fully. We've done everything that we're supposed to do.
Seamus ended up here at the notorious Camp East Montana in El Paso, Texas. The Department of Homeland Security calls him an illegal alien from Ireland, says a green card application does not grant someone legal status in the US, and rejects claims he's being held in high-risk conditions. But his lawyer says he fears for his own life.
The conditions are deplorable, unimaginable, inhumane, not conducive for even the most atrocious of criminals. He's afraid, he's afraid, he's afraid.
Of what?
I don't know. He's afraid, he said he's afraid for his life.
Those fighting for his release say the Trump administration is detaining innocent people, not violent criminals.
I do think other Irish people are at risk. If it can happen to me, it can kind of happen to anybody, you know.
But this Irishman, now living his worst nightmare, still refuses to give up on the American dream.
The picture in my mind, if I got released, would be just my wife waiting for me with her arms open and just embracing my wife, giving her a kiss. It's been so long since I've seen her.
David Blevins, Sky News in Boston.
Well, staying in the US, where President Trump has said he's insisted to the Israeli Prime Minister that talks with Iran continue. He's hosted Benjamin Netanyahu at the White House. Prior to their meeting, Netanyahu met US Secretary of State Marco Rubio and formally signed on to Trump's Board of Peace. The board's first official meeting is slated for next week, and although initially framed as a group to oversee Gaza's future, it's since expanded to include President Trump's vision to resolve other global crises as well. Well, let's go straight to our Mark Stone. And Mark, I mean, you and I have been tracking Benjamin Netanyahu's trips to the White House over the course of the last year. Is this the 7th one?
Yeah, I think so. He has been here more than any other leader. And this trip has come as a bit of a surprise. He was due to be here next week, but has come early. What he wants to talk about and what he has been talking about is Iran. Remember, I mean, it feels like weeks and weeks ago now, but there was a sense just a few weeks ago that Iran was to be targeted by President Trump, by the Americans, after those protests left so many people dead. He said, President Trump said, help is on the way. Since then, he has gone down the diplomatic path to try and get Iran to the negotiating table. They appear to be close to that, whether it's to negotiate on nuclear weapons, to negotiate on ballistic missiles, which Iran is rebuilding after the attack by the Americans last summer, or indeed the prospect of some sort of a change in regime. Now, the Israelis, as ever, are very, very concerned about the signing of any agreement with Iran, because they really fear an existential threat from the Iranians. They clearly don't want the Iranian nuclear program to be rebuilt. They believe the ballistic missile program is being rebuilt, despite the attacks over the course of last summer. And so Netanyahu came effectively to tell President Trump, look, don't sign any negotiating agreements. We need to deal with Iran once and for all. And remember, if the Israelis were a bit concerned about Trump going for it just a few weeks ago, they now know they have the cover of a strike carrier group, an aircraft carrier group that is now in place. So that what they want is for Trump to go ahead and strike Iran. Well, he's not budging at the moment. The statement from President Trump, I'll read the important bit to you. Trump says, there was nothing definitive reached other than I insisted that negotiations with Iran continue to see whether or not a deal can be consummated. If it can, I let the Prime Minister know that will be a preference. If it cannot, well, we'll just have to wait and see what the outcome will be. So that's President Trump's assessment. He insisted to the Israelis that talking must be given a chance. So we'll see where it goes. But at the moment, the president seems absolutely clear that he wants to continue with negotiations, even if those negotiations will not result in a deal that the Israelis are happy with.
Mark, thank you so much. This is The World with me, Yalda Hakim. Next up on the programme, the war in Sudan. I speak to a leading humanitarian who's just returned. Plus, the loss of a 90s television star, James Van Der Beek, dies aged just 48.
Liberation Day.
By popular demand, Here we are.
Donald Trump. It is quite the story. Wherever it goes, on Trump 100, we go with it.
Tell us who you're looking for. Unbelievable we've come to this.
Are you overstating the reach and significance of this deal?
Not like you said it.
From the UK.
Why don't you go back to your country where you have a major migrant problem?
Who's 10 feet from him, and all of a sudden the shot's running out.
People impacted.
I'll tell you on another day on the podcast what that was all about.
Join us wherever you get your podcast.
First Minister, how are you?
Good morning. Good morning.
Nice to see you.
How are you feeling? Looking forward to getting into the parliamentary chamber.
Are you any further forward to making a decision?
No, it's an important day today.
All of the claims were in line with my parliamentary duties, so I'm making that clear to you, Conor.
He was a Scot through and through.
He was a very good politician.
Alex Salmond was controversial, he was a disruptor, but above all, he was respected.
Will you resign if you lose this week?
Again, I'm not planning to, of course, lose the vote of no confidence. I'm planning to win that vote of no confidence.
His face said it all.
My intention to stand down as party leader.
This is now a storm with deadly consequences. How are they feeling?
They're a bit scared at the minute. We've been told to evacuate.
How are you feeling?
Devastated.
Hundreds of homes were wiped out by flooding. I'm Conor Gillis, Sky's Scotland correspondent.
It was probably the darkest time in my life.
Scott is 5 years sober after a cocaine addiction left him close to death. Scotland has a shameful record, worse than England, the worst in Europe.
Why not just say you failed? Because then you might get more respect from families who've lost loved ones.
This is where one of the UK's most prolific rapists thought he'd got away with murder.
Sky News can reveal that former sex workers had told police he was sexually violent.
My Emma.
Free wherever you get your news.
It's over, isn't it?
The Americans say he is Rossi, a fraudster.
This has been one of the most bizarre cases ever heard in a courtroom in this country.
A dangerous murderer.
Do you think you'll ever be able to forgive Andrew Ennis after this?
She said she can forgive him, but as long as he's behind bars.
By doing the right thing, it's destroyed your life.
They terrorised me. They intimidated me. I'm so grateful.
Sky News. The full story first.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
I'm going to take you behind the scenes here for Election Night Live. They have gone up and up.
Being a Sky News journalist.
Ed Conway, Sky News, is anyone going to talk to us?
Mortgage rates did go up very sharply during your time in office.
Here it is.
First off, just the scale of what we're looking at.
Our data shows it's been happening. Question is, why it hasn't been stopped.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News presenter?
We've done the work and the reading, so you don't have to.
Being a Sky News presenter.
Hello and welcome. Westminster, the heart of British politics. I'm so sorry about what happened to you. So what on earth is going on?
It's not true.
Can I tell you what I think? It's really unusual. Mornings with Richard and Frost. Let's crack on. Let's get started.
Let's just turn our attention to Sudan now, where the world's largest humanitarian crisis has grown out of almost 3 years of war. Some of the latest violence has been close to the city of Rahad in North Kordofan province. A doctors' group says the RSF paramilitary hit a vehicle full of displaced people, killing 24 people, including 8 children. The paramilitary has been fighting Sudan's army since April 2023, when a power struggle between 2 generals spiralled into all-out war. Estimates put the number of people killed at 150,000, with millions forced from their homes and famine breaking out. 8 groups have evidence of sexual violence being used as what they call a weapon of terror. The Norwegian Refugee Council describes the war as a nightmare scenario. Jan Egeland is Secretary-General of the Norwegian Refugee Council. I spoke to him this week after he returned from Kordofan.
Yeah, I was a week in South Kordofan, which is the epicenter of the worst conflict and the worst famine next to Darfur, which is next door, within Sudan, which in turn is the biggest humanitarian emergency on earth. And it consists in, an infinite number of desperate mothers fleeing with their small children, fleeing for their lives, and us as humanitarian groups being too few and with too little resources to really help them, because the world is looking away. This is the biggest humanitarian human drama in our time and age today.
We keep hearing these big numbers, Mr. Egeland, but just give us a sense of some of the stories that you were hearing on the ground, what some of these people are telling you about how they're surviving and coping, given how bad the situation is.
Yeah, I spent a lot of time with these mothers, many of them widows. And their recurrent story was that my husband left to search for food because we were starving. And then, not long after, our house was bombed, torched by a drone. I fled with my nursing baby and my small children to this place where I was meeting them, and with NRC, my organization, and some local partners, give them a minimum of food and a minimum of education and some emergency assistance, but too little. And they basically say, how come we thought we were fleeing to safety from the war zone and now we're still starving?
Starving and facing all sorts of other violence. We know that there, is unprecedented levels of rape being used as a weapon of war, sexual assault, sexual violence. For many of these women, it's like not only are the people of Sudan being completely, denied their basic human rights, but these sorts of abuses are also taking place against the population.
Indeed, and in South Kordofan, in Darfur, but also in the east, in the central part of the country, near the capital Khartoum, this violence has been rampant, and there has been massacres beyond belief, mostly on women and children, also on men. Of course, the men was not seen. They were either dead or detained, or couldn't leave at all, or were fighting. So we need 2 things. We need pressure on the arms actors. There are many of them, and they are not lacking any supply of arms, like we lack minimum money for humanitarian relief. And secondly, we need this surge now before the rainy season. In May, the roads I spent many hours in crossing through in this terrain would become impossible in May. So it's really 3 months to avert a biblical famine in Sudan.
But why isn't the international community putting more pressure on all of these competing forces that are supplying these arms and weapons to both sides?
It's a really big question, Yalda, because it seems like both Gulf countries, neighboring countries, private groups are supplying arms. There is a race for gold and for the minerals and the riches of Sudan, and there is no consideration for the civilian population. And there is no one who puts it on top of the agenda. We're living in a time of nationalism, of inward lurking, of arms races, and of my country first, America first, Europe first, and scandals. It shouldn't be like that.
And as you say, it's the civilian population that are bearing the brunt of all of this. They're caught up in the middle of all these competing forces.
Yeah, I've seen too many places like Sudan today where these generals, these men with guns and power are willing to fight each other to the last woman and child. The civilian population is herded around. They have no place really to go, but it's not hopeless. We have to paint a picture that, listen, my organization worked with more than 40 local Sudanese heroic organizations. For $5,000, we were able to provide 500 meals per day now for months. Another $25,000, and another organization could give very many families a hut and some start-up money for some livelihood. I mean, this should be possible to do in an age where the countries are spending trillions on armaments.
That was the Secretary-General of the Norwegian Refugee Council, Jan Egeland. The star of one of the most popular teen television shows of the 90s, James Van Der Beek, has died at the age of just 48. He'd been battling bowel cancer for the past 2 years. He was best known for playing Dawson's Creek, or Dawson Leary, rather, in the series Dawson's Creek.
Aren't you? I have to, otherwise I'll never know. Just go. Dawson.
Joey, go. I'm telling you before I take it all back, all right? Just go. Go.
The show also launched the careers of James's co-stars Joshua Jackson, Michelle Williams and Katie Holmes. It was indeed one of the defining shows of the era. Well, our correspondent Charlotte Leeming is here. Charlotte, oh, it's so sad, isn't it?
It's really sad.
And so young, 48.
I know, and just watching that clip there, it's loaded with such nostalgia and affection, isn't it, for people around the world who loved that show. I mean, just embodied those angsty teenage years we could all relate to in the coming-of-age show. And as the main character, he really became an international heartthrob, didn't he? We all knew him, one of the most famous faces in the world in the late 90s and early noughties. And you really can't emphasise strongly enough, really, the cultural impact that show had, you know, following this group of friends as they learnt about love, friendship, and just trying to find their place in the world, I guess. An essential viewing, wasn't it, for teenagers, young adults, because of how relatable I think it was. It had very frank, candid dialogue, very real storylines about relationships and sexuality. And, you know, I don't think without this show we wouldn't have the modern shows like Euphoria and Sex Education. And as a result, audience just watched it in their droves, didn't they? We watched it as well, didn't we? You know, just making stars of these household names. And right at the heart of it all was James.
Of course, because he was the main character. He was Dawson, and it was Dawson's Creek. And, you know, 48 years old, he was battling bowel cancer for a number of years.
That's right. Now, he announced in November 2024 that he'd been diagnosed with bowel cancer. He'd been receiving treatment for some time, but he said he wanted to tell his own story on his own terms because he'd been informed that a tabloid newspaper were going to publish these details. And, of course, it was something very private. He wanted to control that narrative. But he did describe how the diagnosis gave him a renewed love of performing and acting. He was very family-focused with 6 children and had, to some extent, left show business behind after the success of that show. But it led him back to the limelight and people still remembered him. They still loved him. So, you know, he came back and had this sort of revival. But his wife, Kimberly, announced that his death at the age of 48, as you say, a very emotional statement on Instagram. In it, she said he met his final days with courage, faith and grace. And tributes have been coming in from other stars of that era. We'll remember, like Sarah Michelle Gellar. She said his legacy will live on. And I think with him, we won't just remember him for this show. We'll also remember everything he did to raise awareness of bowel cancer as well.
Charlotte, thank you so much. Really, really grateful. Well, we've been bringing you updates on some of the conversation around what Jim Ratcliffe said to us here on Sky News today about Britain being colonised by immigrants. We heard from the Prime Minister, who's responded and reacted to his comments, calling on Jim Ratcliffe to apologise. Nigel Farage has now responded, saying the country has undergone unprecedented mass immigration that has changed the character of many areas in the country. Labour may try and ignore that, but reform won't. We'll have much more on that on Anna Botting's show next. Good night.